Good morning, afternoon, or evening, folks, and welcome to Cast of All Trades, the show where we talk about developing skills, exploring ideas, and following curiosity. My name is Orion, and in this episode, I talk about investing for beginners. As a note, this episode is not financial advice. It is meant for educational purposes only. I may share some tips and strategies, but do your own research before investing into anything. Without further ado, let's get into it. Before I start really talking about investing, I want to touch a bit on who this episode is primarily for. I'll be primarily using US stocks or the US market for my examples. However, the information should be general enough to apply to most major markets. This episode is for people who know nothing or very little about investing, or just looking to get their feet wet, looking to start learning just a little bit to get their head around what this whole investing thing is and how they can get started. So with that, what is investing? Investing is buying into a thing with the goal and reasonable expectation of long-term growth. This is not your get-rich-quick scheme. This is not the send $1 million to some Nigerian prince and get a crap ton of gold that's going to skyrocket you from being a millionaire to a quadrillionaire, whatever. This is for the person who is trying to make steady, long-term growth to grow their money over time. If you're looking for short-term growth, then you're not investing. You're trading or you're gambling. So why should you invest if you're not going to get immediate returns right away, if you're not going to skyrocket, if you're not going to become a billionaire, quadrillionaire from your investments overnight? Well, let me look at this from two different perspectives, from two common things that people who don't invest tend to do. First, there's keeping your cash in a mattress, and the second is keeping everything in a bank account. So why is keeping cash in your mattress a bad idea? There's this thing called inflation, where essentially the government prints more money, and it's a basic concept of supply and demand. Essentially, the more supply of something there is, the less demand there is for it. So as more US dollars get printed, typically when we see supply and demand, it's in the context of an item, like the supply of an item that someone is purchasing with US dollars, but the same concept still applies to someone who is trying to use US dollars to purchase something. It's sort of the other way around. The higher the supply of US dollars is, the less valuable each individual dollar is. So if you keep all of your dollars in a mattress, for example, if you keep all of your cash buried in a hole in the backyard, basically what you're doing is you are letting inflation erode away at your money, where perhaps let's say you put $100 in your mattress. Over the next year, that you're still going to have that $100, but the actual real life value of it is going to be the equivalent of $97 in the first year that you held on to it. So we'll say year zero, your $100 equals $100 in value. Year one, your $100 equals $97 in value compared to that year zero. Year two, let's say that $97 is now the same as about $94, $93, somewhere in there, of actual value compared to year zero. Over time, that the value of your dollar is going to, so far, has gone down just over the past who knows how many years. Some people argue in the past 80 years, some people argue the past 100 or so, that the US dollar has really lost a ton of its value over that couple decade time span, couple decade to century time frame. So essentially, keeping your cash in a mattress or keeping it buried in your backyard, yes, you are technically retaining the actual physical cash, the tangible cash, and you're not losing any money. You're not losing any money nominally, but in reality, you are losing money. You are losing value over time. So you might think, okay, what if I shove everything I have in a bank account? That way I'm getting interest on what I'm earning. Yes, that is true. You are making some interest, usually, but very rarely will that interest keep up with inflation. So you'll still be losing, or you might, let's say, for example, for the best case scenario, let's say you happen to find a bank account, a savings account where you put all of your money in there, and the interest on that bank account is going to keep up with inflation exactly. Great. Now you have stopped losing real life value over time as more money gets printed, but you're still not growing money. So you're still having to work for every single cent that you earn, and you're not going to be able to save or grow your wealth nearly as quickly as you would if you were able to invest. So, with that, why should you invest? Because investing allows you to take money that you currently have, put it into some sort of vehicle, some sort of asset. With the definition that I provided earlier, investing is buying into a thing with the goal and reasonable expectation of long-term growth. So you can take that money that you were storing in your mattress, that you were keeping in your bank account, you can take some of it, you can put it into a couple different assets with the goal of trying to grow that money faster than what you would get by keeping it in a bank account with a high interest yield, or by keeping it as cash doing nothing. So how do you get started? Let's start off with the goal. What is your goal for investing? Are you looking for pure growth, where it's capital gains growth? It's the traditional idea when you think of investing of buy low, sell high. Is that where you're going for asset growth? Or are you going for more dividends and cash flow, where there are some types of assets that will pay you out repeatedly over time or on a regular basis, where you buy into something once, you hold on to that thing, and so long as you hold on to that thing, it'll keep on giving you payments over a long period of time. There's pros and cons to both, and you can do a mixed version of it. Generally, you're just going to have to think and figure out for yourself, what is your goal? What do you want? Do you want to hit a certain dollar figure? Do you want to hit a certain income figure from your assets? There's a number of goals that you could have, so just think about it for a while, decide for yourself, what is it that you ultimately want to get from investing? Next, we'll touch on how much are you willing to invest, i.e. this is looking at risk tolerance. How much are you willing to sacrifice, or how much are you willing to risk to try to get to that goal? For some people, in order to so you have a very high goal, if you want to hit $10 million over the span of maybe 5 years, this isn't that I don't know if I would even consider investing at that point, because that's still very short-term thinking for many investors. How much would you have to invest, and how much would you be willing to invest to get to that figure, based on what are you investing in, what's the outlook of that sector of what you're investing in, etc. So ultimately, this whole section of what is your goal and what is your risk tolerance, this is going to be your baseline as you figure out what is it that I'm going to invest in to get to that goal, and what is the risk I'm willing to take to get there, to increase my odds of getting there. So with that in mind, what are you actually going to invest in? What are the assets that you're going to look at? Let's start simple. Let's start with something that I believe everyone should have, having a savings account. Now hold on. You're probably thinking to yourself, Orion, earlier you said don't use a savings account. Correction. What I really meant to say is you don't want to have everything in the savings account. The purpose of a savings account, in my opinion, is to store money in there for emergency situations. You want to have X amount of months rent covered, X amount of living cost covered, ready for you in that savings account. Something that's high yield, that has a high interest rate to it. So you put a bunch of money in there. Perhaps it doesn't meet inflation, perhaps it comes pretty close. But the goal of it is not to grow a bunch of money with this savings account. The goal is to have a bunch of money sitting there in case you need it, in case of emergency. Because if you have your money tied up in investment vehicles, investment assets, things that are designed to grow you more money, typically these investment assets are not necessarily what we call hyper liquid. That meaning, how quickly can you turn the actual asset back into cash that you can use and spend without any hassle? Oftentimes going from investment back into cash that you can actually use has some tax implications, there's a couple other implications that might come up, but generally, if you want to have a ready store of cash that you can use on a moment's notice in case of emergency, that's what, in my opinion, the savings account is for. So once you have a savings figure set aside in a high yield savings account, something that earns you a couple % of interest, something that you can readily grab in case of emergency, in case something happens, then great. Let's move on to the actual assets of things that you can invest in. When people think of investments, the first thing many of us think of is stocks. So when it comes to investing in stocks, what accounts do you need? How do you actually get started? First, you're going to have to choose a brokerage. This is a company that essentially allows you to buy stocks through them. They sort of act as the middleman. They make it easy for people to buy stocks. A couple examples of these companies are Vanguard, Fidelity, Charles Schwab, M1 Finance, and much more. There are many brokerages out there. You can just look one up. You can get some reviews on to see what do people think of these brokerages, what makes them easy to use, etc. But generally, just find one. Most of them are fairly similar nowadays, so choose one, go with that. Then for actual accounts, there are two primary types of accounts that you might be interested in, especially in the US. There are retirement accounts, and there are non-retirement accounts, is how I'll best put it. For retirement accounts, there are three that'll come up. There's an IRA, there's a Roth IRA, and there's a 401k. The two that you mostly have personal control over will be a IRA and a Roth IRA. A 401k most people will get through a employer. To quickly run over these three types of retirement accounts and what they mean and what they do, I'll put it simply like this. For IRAs, they are a type of retirement account where you put in money pre-tax, it grows tax-free, and then you are taxed when it's ultimately withdrawn later in life as you're retiring. The main drawback of IRAs is that there are yearly deposit limits for certain tax brackets. So if you make a certain amount of money, you can only put a certain amount of money into the IRA for it to grow and for you to invest with it. Next is the Roth IRA. It's similar to an IRA, but changed in one key way. For a Roth IRA, you put in money post-tax. So you pay taxes upfront, and then you put money into this account. It grows tax-free, and then another main distinction from IRAs is that when you take the money out, you are not taxed on money that is withdrawn from a Roth IRA. And then just like a standard IRA, you have yearly deposit limits for certain tax brackets. So if you make a certain amount of money, you can only put so much money into a Roth IRA. So again, the key difference is IRA, pre-tax money goes in, you pay taxes when it comes out. Roth IRA, post-tax money goes in, and you don't get taxed on anything when it comes back out. So finally, there's the 401k. This is similar to an IRA in that you put pre-tax money into it, it grows tax-free, and then you're taxed when you ultimately withdraw it. So in that way, it's exactly like a IRA. But where the main difference is that many companies in the US will have a 401k employer contribution match. Essentially, what this means is that if you put a certain percentage or a certain dollar amount into your 401k, your employer will match that contribution and pay that same amount into your 401k as well. For example, let's say that you work at a hospital and there is a 401k match of $5,000 annually. Essentially, what that would mean is that if you put up to $5,000 that year, your employer will also put up to $5,000 into your 401k account. You can put in more if you want, but your employer contribution will not be more than that 5K. So what that means is that if you want to max out your 401k, this is what people often mean when they say maxing out your 401k, that means that you put the maximum employer contribution match limit into your 401k each year so that your employer pays out that same amount into your 401k, essentially meaning that you are getting twice the amount of money that you put into it. So you put in 5K, your employer puts in 5K. You could put in 6K, but your employer will only put in 5K. You kind of see what I'm going for here? Great. So those are the three main retirement accounts. There's other intricacies between all of them, but put simply, there's the IRA, the Roth IRA, and the 401k. Finally, the non-retirement account of choice I'll talk about is the brokerage account. Don't get this confused with brokerages, like the brokerage companies, Vanguard, Fidelity, Charles Schwab, M1 Finance, whatever. This is a type of account you can get through these companies. Put simply, a brokerage account is the most standard stock buying, trading, selling type of account that you can have. You put money in post-tax. Aspects may be taxed in certain situations and in some, such as sometimes for dividends, sometimes for other types of transactions done with a brokerage account. Then you're also taxed when it's withdrawn. Then finally, the main difference between a standard brokerage account and the retirement accounts I mentioned earlier is that you can put in as much money as you want. Yes, you can do that with a 401k, but generally, you can put in as much money as you want into a brokerage and you can take out as much money as you have in that brokerage with no limits. With the retirement accounts, you cannot take out, there are limitations on what you can take out pre-retirement for these accounts. But with a brokerage, it's your money. You do whatever the hell you want with it. So those are the main types of accounts that you're looking at. There's the 3 types of retirement accounts, the IRA, the Roth IRA, and the 401k. And then there is the standard brokerage account. Now that you have a general account thought up and figured out of what is it that you're going to do, what are you actually going to use this account for? When people think about buying and selling stocks, the thing that they think about often is buying into individual companies, say buying into Apple, buying into Procter & Gamble, buying into Nike, whatever. This is generally seen as the high risk, high reward strategy or type of investing when it comes to the stock market. Because if you choose individual companies, you're essentially placing a bet on that company that is going to do well in the long term, or that's going to do well over a certain period of time. Many people are not good at this. Most people do not make money by betting or by investing in individual companies. Where most people make most of their money is through the next type of investment you can buy in a stock portfolio, and that is called an index fund. This is a computer automated fund based on a certain set of rules that says we're going to invest in these types of companies. So all you have to do is put your money into your account and then buy this one stock that represents the index fund. The index fund then goes out and purchases stocks based on their set criteria of whatever it is it might be. A couple popular ones would be VOO, the Vanguard Total Stock Market Index Fund, where essentially you buy into VOO. And what that would do is that you're essentially buying into the entirety of the stock market, a very tiny sliver of each company in the stock market. Another popular one might be one called SCHD. It's the Charles Schwab Dividend Growth Index Fund, where the whole point of the index fund is that it is all about buying into companies that have projected dividend growth over a long period of time, as in the companies pay out a dividend, as in you hold those companies and they pay you for holding them. And it's projected that those companies are going to grow over a period of time, and that their dividends, the payment that they give you for just holding them, is also going to grow over a projected period of time. So that might be another index fund that people might be interested in. Essentially, it's taking the human aspect out of the whole investing thing. But what if you want to rely on more stock experts to buy and manage your index funds for you, where they buy into a bunch of companies and they essentially do that whole aspect for you. They research the companies, they figure out where they're going to put your money, they do all that for you. That's often what we call a mutual fund, where think of it like index funds are the computerized version, mutual funds are the humanized versions, where index funds are all managed by computers and algorithms, mutual funds are managed directly by people. So, what's the main difference between index funds and mutual funds? Index funds are computers, mutual funds are people. Generally, I would recommend against mutual funds and just use index funds instead. Why is that? If you're buying to a mutual fund, shouldn't that be better because you're getting stock experts who are looking at the stock market all day, 24/7, this is their life? Shouldn't they do better than just a simple computer algorithm? You'd think. But in a very famous bet between Warren Buffett and a number of top hedge fund, mutual fund managers, he did a bet where essentially he was saying that he was going to invest in an index fund over a period of, I believe it was 7 to 10 years, something like that, versus a bunch of hedge fund managers who are all running their own mutual funds to see who would come out on top over that span of 7 to 10 years. And at the end of that time frame, index funds did better by a long shot. Why? Well, there's one main reason that I at least attribute to the reason that index funds tended to do better than mutual funds. There's, two main reasons, actually. One, mutual funds tend to have higher fees on the user. And two, index funds tend to have less flashiness to them. They tend to get less distracted by shiny object syndrome, because computers don't get shiny object syndrome. You tell them what to do and they do the thing. Whereas humans, we get very distracted by shiny object syndrome. We see a new shiny thing, we have to go leap on it, we have to go attack it, we have to go follow that thing. Because mutual funds are ran by people, one, you have to pay them more, hence they have a higher expense ratio or higher expense cost compared to holding an index fund. Mutual funds also, since they're run by people, are often distracted by other new shiny objects, things that might distract them. Things that might say, ooh, this new investment that came out that I just heard about, this new company that came out, why don't we place our holders' monies in that place, in that company. That could be good. But in the long term, typically index funds tend to outperform mutual funds, and depending on how good you are at picking individual stocks might do better than mutual funds, might do better than index funds, or might do horribly worse. So if you want to keep stocks simple, the simplest thing you can do for stocks is buying into a index fund of choice, whether that be the S&P 500 index fund, one of many of them, where that's buying into the top 500 biggest or best companies, quote unquote, in the US, buying into a dividend growth index fund like SCHD, the Charles Schwab Dividend Growth Index Fund. There's hundreds of index funds you can look for. You just have to do your research and decide what is your goals and which of these is most likely to contribute towards my goal. Moving on from the stock market to the next most popular type of investment, that being real estate. There are two main types of real estate I'm going to touch on here: physical and paper. When you think of real estate, most often people think of buying a building. Most people think their house is their greatest asset, when in reality, perhaps that isn't necessarily the case, because while your home's nominal value or the dollar amount might be increasing or maybe going up, the real value of it may not be. Say every single house in America suddenly shoots up by $100,000 in value. Great, isn't that a good thing? Not necessarily. That might be a sign that there is rampant inflation and that the value of the dollar has actually gone down a bunch. So the real value of your house has stayed the same, but the nominal value of your house may have gone up a bunch. That would be a good sign that the dollar isn't doing so well, that perhaps there's other methods that you can do to grow your wealth. Oftentimes people think, oh, what if I add on attachments to my home? Very rarely has adding attachments to homes really shot up the value of a home in a real way. Oftentimes, extensions to a home may cost more than you actually get in return for extending your home in certain ways. That's not to say remodeling doesn't ever give you an actual profit or an actual return on remodeling your home in the long run, but generally, most house remodelings don't actually increase the value of the home that much, or tend to cost more than the value that you'll get on the back end selling your home again. Another thing you could do for buying real estate is if you're buying a rental property, a physical building that you're just going to rent out to people, whether that be like a single home, maybe you buy a duplex and you have half of it for you and the other half's rented out to someone. Perhaps you get a threeplex or a whole apartment building. This can be complex, expensive. Many ways that you can do it. It certainly is possible. There are many people who do great things by investing in real estate. Many people who make a lot of money by investing in real estate. But it's a long process that takes a lot of time, a lot of effort, and not something I'm going to be able to cover in one short podcast episode. So, what if you're looking to buy real estate, but you don't want to go through the whole hassle of finding a home, managing it, cleaning it up, managing repairs, all that stuff? Then you might want to look at paper real estate or real estate investment trusts. This is essentially a stock market version of real estate, where you put money into a real estate investment trust. It is a type of stock that you can buy on almost any standard stock market. You're essentially buying into a pool of a bunch of homes, a bunch of buildings, a bunch of real estate for certain sectors. For example, some real estate investment trusts focus entirely on medical real estate. They focus on buying and building medical buildings, and they rent out those buildings to people who want to run hospitals with them. So you're getting dividend income in the form of rental income through those real estate investment trusts. It's kind of like being a property owner, then having a property manager manage everything for you. They take a good cut of the profit, then they pass on the rest of the profit to you. That's the best way that I can describe real estate investment trusts. It's similar to buying on the stock market. It even has a stock market ticker that you can look up and research. Almost in every way, it's just like buying on the stock market. But the main difference is, instead of buying into a company, you're buying into a collection of real estate, a collection of buildings, and the rent that they generate. So that's a simplified version of buying and investing in real estate. Certainly, if you want to dig more into it, there are many other places that you can go for that. I'm personally not an expert on it, and the research I've done on real estate is fairly limited, but that should be good enough, a good enough place for you to get started on deciding for yourself, do I want to pursue this more? All right, let's move on to the new popular kid on the block, crypto. If you're looking to buy into crypto, what types of accounts do you need? Crypto is fairly simple in many terms. It's just most people don't understand how to get into it because it's not something that many of us have grown up with or interacted with. So what type of account do you need? Simply put, all you need is an account on a crypto exchange. There are many crypto exchanges out there, many options. There's Coinbase, there's crypto.com, there's Kraken. Those are some of the most popular ones. Essentially, you want an exchange. An exchange is something where you can put, we call it a on-ramp and off-ramp. A fiat on-ramp is where you can use US dollars, convert that into cryptocurrency. You can on-ramp it onto the crypto markets, sort of like making a deposit into your brokerage account when buying and selling stocks. Aside from an exchange, you're also going to want to have some type of crypto wallet. There's a couple types of crypto wallets. This is essentially a place that you can store and keep your crypto safe. In fact, many exchanges have wallets built into their own sites. So technically, you don't need to go and find another wallet that you can store all of your crypto in because many crypto exchanges have those built in directly. But for security purposes, it's generally recommended that you have some type of crypto wallet off of the exchange or in another place that you can store most of your crypto. There are two types of wallets. There's a hot wallet, which is a wallet that is connected directly to the internet, or there's a cold wallet, a physical offline wallet that you can hold, you can physically take with you. It is physical, like something you can actually touch, like a standard hard drive almost in some ways. Oftentimes with extra security features built in, but yeah, that's in simple terms, that's what it is. So you want a crypto exchange and some type of wallet. Feel free to do your own research on types of wallets. There are, I'll list off two types of hot wallets. There is MetaMask is one of the most popular hot wallets there is, and Exodus is another type of hot wallet. And a third one that I'll recommend that you take a look at is one called Cake Wallet. Go ahead, take a look at those, see if any of them fit your fancy. But generally, that's kind of what you're looking at. And then for cold wallets, there's a number of types of cold wallets out there, but two name brands that I would look at is one called Ledger and one called Trezor. So those are the types of accounts and things that you might be interested in when buying crypto. So what are you actually going to be buying when you're buying cryptocurrencies? I've broken this up into a couple different sections, those being mainstream coins, meme coins, alternative coins, crypto mining, crypto staking, and how you actually make money with crypto. Let's start with that last one. How do most people make money with crypto? For most people, it is the standard investing portfolio, the standard investing mindset of buy low, sell high. It's the whole capital gains strategy of you want to buy something when it's valued at a very low price and then sell it when it hits a very high price. So what is it that people are actually buying and selling when doing this? Let's start with the mainstream coins. There are three main coins that I'm looking at here, those being Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Tether. Of these, Tether is not one that you're going to necessarily be buying and selling to make a profit. Think of it as taking your money when you're going across a border. So you're going from the US to Canada and you want to buy things in Canada. Well, you can't use US dollars for that. You have to use Canadian dollars. Tether is essentially the online crypto version of the Canadian dollar, where you take your money, you take your US dollar to the exchange, you on-ramp your money onto the exchange, where it's essentially being put onto the exchange saying, okay, now it's here, now you can buy stuff with it. One thing that many people like to do is they like to convert their US dollar into Tether, or USDT is what its acronym is, US dollar Tether, and it's the equivalent of $1 US, but it's oftentimes used to help transfer money across many exchanges, across across wallets. Think of it as the online version of the US dollar. So in actuality, the two mainstream coins that people use to buy and invest in would be Bitcoin and Ethereum. Those are sort of seen as the two gold standard cryptocurrencies. So what actually gives Bitcoin and Ethereum value? What makes people believe in these things, believe that they have value? I'm not going to dig too deep into this since there's a whole big rabbit hole that you can go down learning about cryptocurrencies, how they work, what gives them value. But essentially, these are online protocols. These are online algorithms that people believe in, that people say, okay, because these currencies, let's use Bitcoin for example. Bitcoin is sort of the grandfather of cryptocurrencies. The main reason that people give value to it is because there is a fixed number of Bitcoin. There is about 21 million Bitcoin out there. You cannot make more of them. It is an algorithmically driven thing where there is no government, there is no one individual who can say, okay, we don't have enough Bitcoin. Let's just print more. Let's just type in some zeros to add another million Bitcoin to this pool, to the total existing number of Bitcoin. So it's not a currency that you can inflate in any way. Because there is a fixed number, no one can change it. The guy who created Bitcoin fell off the map and did not give his password, his keys to anyone that would let them add more Bitcoin into the world. So there's a fixed number of Bitcoin in the world. That's part of why people believe that it has value, because it's something that governments can't control, because it's something that governments cannot inflate. Ethereum, on the other hand, is a coin that has sort of I don't entirely know how to describe it, a network of sorts, where it has a bunch of algorithmic processes that people can build on top of to create other useful things. They call it a blockchain, where you can essentially track things forever. You can have one-of-one minted things on Ethereum in a digital copy. It can get very complicated very fast, but essentially the best way I can describe it is Ethereum is a type of program where people can build off of it, and they can build off in such a way that you can track things very well, you can store things very well digitally, and to contribute to that, people will buy Ethereum. They'll buy the Ethereum cryptocurrency to help contribute to it, to help run it, to help operate it. So those are the two mainstream coins. Let's move on to the meme coins. These are coins that don't necessarily have any real tangible value to them, but they exist, and people for some reason buy and sell them, partially based on hype, based on just how people feel about a certain meme at a certain time. It's weird, but some people like it, some people don't. Essentially, this is the closest that you're going to get to gambling from everything that I've recommended here today. Meme coins, like I said, don't have any inherent value to them, but they just sort of change on a whim, almost, is what it seems, is the best way I can describe it. Two examples of meme coins would be Dogecoin and Pepe coin. And as the name implies, meme coin, many of these cryptocurrencies are based on popular memes. So there you go. And finally, we have the alternative coins. These are coins that many of them are built on Ethereum, or many of them are built on similar networks, and they all have unique purposes of sorts. For example, Litecoin was designed to be sort of the silver to Bitcoin's gold. Monero is a popular cryptocurrency for people who want to stay anonymous and private while they're making their transactions, for people who believe that privacy should exist in finance. Another one being XRP or Solana or like Filecoin. There's many other types of alternative coins, many of them based on their own projects, where when people buy into these coins, they're supporting these projects. In a way, it's kind of similar to the stock market, where you buy stock of a certain company. You are essentially paying that company to say, I'm going to support this company by holding some of its stock. The same thing can kind of be said for cryptocurrencies and these alternative coins. When you buy XRP, you are essentially paying some amount of US dollar or some amount of something to hold that XRP token. By doing that, you are contributing to the project by providing them some sort of financial stability, some financial means to contribute, to continue to function, or to continue to grow. So those are the main types of coins that I want to touch on, those being mainstream coins, meme coins, and alternative coins. But what if you don't want to just buy and sell, like buy low, sell high? There's two other ways of making money and profiting from crypto. There's mining and there's staking. Mining is essentially having computers doing a bunch of number crunching and providing other services, such as algorithm crunching, monitoring car data, monitoring local weather patterns, or other services like that, creating information, providing that to someone in exchange for cryptocurrency. In general, the stronger your computer when it comes to number crunching and certain types of algorithms, the more likely you're going to be at successfully mining a type of cryptocurrency. Sometimes people like to gather a bunch of computers into pools and work together to number crunch, and if someone hits a certain number and does the thing right, then everyone gets rewarded for successfully crunching that section of the algorithm. So there's mining. Then there's staking, where this is providing liquidity for people who are trading. You get a slice of the network fee. Think of it kind of like PayPal, where there's a processing fee for facilitating transactions. That's what you're going to be getting. PayPal gets a little sliver of whatever the transaction fee is between you and whatever back end person is trying to sell you something. Except in this situation, when you're staking, you get to be PayPal. When other people are buying and selling and trading cryptocurrencies, by staking, you provide a little bit of a certain type of cryptocurrency to the market to act as liquidity, to make things easier for other people to buy, sell, and trade. For doing that, you get rewarded with a little bit more cryptocurrency. So that's crypto in a nutshell. I did not go super deep into it, but generally, if you want to learn more about crypto, I'd highly recommend just doing a deep dive on your own, doing a lot of research and figuring out what is crypto, how does it work, what is it that you're actually buying when you're buying crypto, etc. Next, I want to touch on commodities. These are seen as physical goods, such as, I'm going to use gold and silver as an example, but you can use gold and silver, you could talk about sugar, you could talk about oil, you could talk about like precious stones sometimes. These are tangible goods that people want and need. So when you're looking at commodities, there are two main types. There's physical and there's paper. Just like real estate, there's the physical real estate, there's the paper real estate and REITs. For commodities, there's the physical, such as actual bars of gold and silver, and there's a paper version where you can get a stock market buy-in to, say, buying into a vault of gold and silver. And some people have preferences for one over another. I know many people who like to have physical bars of gold and silver because they feel safe having it physically on them, because they know, I purchased 1 ounce, I know this is 1 ounce. Whereas for people who like to buy paper versions, they might not know if when they buy a paper ounce of silver, that did the vault actually get another physical ounce of silver to have stored in their vault? Or is it just they have a couple ounces of gold and silver and they're selling that out to 400 people, telling each of them, oh, do you see this 1 ounce we have? All of you own this 1 ounce, but no one else knows that you own that ounce. Again, there are pros and cons to having physical versions versus paper versions. For example, for physical versions of gold and silver, you often won't get the full market value of it when you're trying to resell it or when you're buying it. When you're buying and selling gold and silver, you're probably going to be hit with more premiums for something, essentially the value over top of the actual precious metal content value of it. And then when you're selling it, you're probably not going to get that full market value again either. You might get between 90 and 95% of the actual market value of like a bar of gold or a round of silver. Versus when you're buying and selling paper versions, you might be more likely to get closer to that market value because a lot of people are trading at the same time, and when you're working with people individually in the markets, you might be more likely to get closer to that actual market value. So that's commodities for you. They're goods that people generally want to buy and sell that they view as precious and valuable. Next, we have annuities, and these are not typically seen as a standard investment for some people, but it does have its place. Are you worried about outliving your investment? Are you thinking long term to say, well, what if I outlive how much I invest? What if I make it to 100 years old, but I only plan on actually making it to 95? What am I going to do about those last 5 years? I'm going to run out of money before I get to my old age. Well, think of this as sort of reverse life insurance. This is what annuities are for. Over the years, you can pay into an annuities plan, and then when you hit a certain age, they'll pay you out for the rest of your life. They'll pay you out a fixed amount every year or every month for the rest of your life, no matter how long you apparently live. So this is sort of like reverse life insurance, as I said earlier, where you're getting insurance for living past how long you think you might live, or living past how long you think your investments are going to last you. Just wanted to briefly touch on this one because it's an interesting option, an interesting thing for people to look into, and not something I see people talk about very often. The final type of investment I want to touch on is going to be collectibles and alternative investment. But really, this is a section on talking about what should you invest in? Invest in what you know and what you're willing to learn. There are a number of people who love to invest in cards, watches, cars, businesses, and startups because these are the worlds that they know. These are the worlds that they're good at. Someone who knows Pokemon cards has been playing Pokemon their entire life and has been keeping track of what cards do well, what cards sell well, and been actually watching the markets for Pokemon cards for years is probably going to do pretty well buying and selling, trading Pokemon cards. versus someone who maybe doesn't do that, versus maybe a tree farmer who their investment is that they know tree farming. So they're going to plant certain types of trees that are going to do well and sell very well in the years to come. Really, these collectible investments and these alternative investments are all about thinking, what is it that you know really well? What is it that you know that you can make a profit on, that you can do well with? Or what is it that you're willing to learn and really willing to learn? Because, like I said, cards, watches, cars, there are certain types of cars that you may figure out, okay, I'm pretty sure this car is going to do well over the next 20 years. If I buy it now, keep it in good condition, I'm going to be able to sell it in 20 years and make a bunch of money off of it. Versus most people who buy cars, you buy a car and it loses $20,000 when you roll it off the lot. And by the time that you might go back to resell it, it's lost another $50,000 in value. So for these collectibles and alternative investments, what do you know and what is it that you're willing to learn? And this goes for basically everything that I've touched on today. This advice goes for everything. Don't just invest in something that I've told you about today. Don't invest in anything that you don't know about. Don't invest in stuff that you know nothing about. If you're going to invest, do your own research. Learn a bit about the stocks that you're buying into. Learn about how real estate works. Learn about crypto. Learn about buying and selling precious metals. Learn about all these things. Then start taking your steps into buying and selling and putting actual money on the line. So, where should you go to learn more? I've thought about this for a while because I've read a lot of investment books over the years, and I really wanted to narrow it down to my three favorite recommendations that I will give anyone. These are the three recommendations that came to mind for me. First is I Will Teach You to Be Rich by Ramit Sethi. Second is The Richest Man in Babylon by George S. Clason. And finally, Dial to Zero by Bill Perkins, like the mediocre Midwestern breakfast restaurant. So in these books, you'll learn a bunch about investing, about how the simple principles of how investing works, what you can do to grow money over a longer period of time, and so much more. In summary, investing can be very complicated if you make it, and generally the more complicated you make it, the worse people tend to do. Thus, in my opinion, here's the best thing you can do. 1. Set up your desired accounts. 2. In those accounts, set up recurring deposits and buys with a few assets you plan on holding for a very long time, whether that's crypto, index funds, gold and silver, real estate investment trusts, whatever. 3. Reinvest any dividends you may gain, and increase your deposits over time as you continue to earn more. 4. Read. Learn about finance and investing, even if it's just the 3 books that I recommended. Trust me, those will get you very far in your investing journey. And finally, 5. Update as needed and no sooner. I mentioned this earlier, where people tend to get distracted by the new shiniest object, and that's often what kills us. Keep things simple, because trust me, simple is good. If you enjoyed this episode, then please share it with a friend you think would like it, or share it on social media. It would absolutely mean the world to me, and it helps the podcast grow so much. With all that said, thanks for listening. I greatly appreciate it, and I'll talk to you all later. Ciao.